Olga Tarnopolsky speaking to me earlier. As I mentioned, has reported that the U.S. is involved in these Israeli strikes. We will, of course, bring you the latest updates as they come in. But we turn now to the latest on the fighting between neighbors Pakistan and Afghanistan. Islamabad has declared an open war on Kabul, bombing both the capital stronghold of Kandahar early Friday. Pakistan accuses militants from the Pakistani Taliban, and the U.S. has affirmed Pakistan's right to defend itself. Afghanistan's Taliban leaders, though, say they are willing to negotiate. Earlier, I spoke to our correspondent Shazeb Wallah. He gave us this from Islamabad.
Fighting along the border between Pakistan continues, but at a lower intensity than yesterday's peak of violence. Exchange of artillery and small arms fire at several locations along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border is still going on. Pakistani authorities have claimed to have carried out fresh airstrikes in the Afghan province of Nangarhar, military installations and ammunition depots. At the same time, the Afghan Taliban say they have carried out drone attacks against Pakistani military camps, something that was confirmed to us by security sources in Islam. What we are seeing now is that both sides have entered a cycle of retaliation. One side is responding to the strikes or attacks of the other, and even though they have claimed that to have been open to discussion and solution, the situation remains quite volatile. We have seen yesterday that the Pakistani military spokesperson said that the operation will continue until Pakistan has accomplished its objective, which in simple words is to bring under control terrorist attacks carried out by anti-Pakistan terrorist groups from oil, especially by the Pakistani Taliban that are carrying out terrorist attacks against Pakistan. At the same time, the leader of the Noor Wali Masood yesterday evening called on its insurgents to intensify attacks inside Pakistan in support for Afghan Taliban. The fears of unconventional warfare have increased, where there are fears that there can be terrorist attacks inside Pakistan. As a result, we have seen that last night and in hours of today morning, 9 police stations were attacked by insurgents in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province of Pakistan that borders Afghanistan, including a checkpoint on the outskirts of Peshawar, the provincial capital. Following these attacks, security has been raised in the province. A curfew has been imposed in 2 districts of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Peshawar, we saw yesterday evening that the police and military even patrols.
Our correspondent Shazeb Wallah speaking to me earlier there from Islamabad. I saw nothing and I did nothing wrong. The words of former U.S. President Bill Clinton as he gave an opening statement to lawmakers about his ties to Epstein. The deposition on Friday in Chappaqua, New York, marked the first time the president has testified in such a way before Congress and came a day after his wife gave her own testimony. Democrats say it sets a precedent for the current U.S. president to testify as well. Morgan Eyre has more on what Bill Clinton had to say.
Former U.S. President Bill Clinton denies any for Epstein. Clinton was grilled for more than 6 hours by U.S. lawmakers in a closed-door deposition. It's the first time a former president has been compelled to testify to Congress. In a statement published on social media, the president said he had long stopped associating with Epstein by the time the sex offender pled guilty to prostitution from an underage girl in 2008. In a video after the deposition, he said he knew nothing of Epstein's crimes.
And America from the idea that no person is above the law, even presidents, especially presidents. I know what I saw, and more importantly, what I didn't see. And I know what I did, and more importantly, what I did. I saw nothing and did nothing.
Clinton's appearance in front of members of Congress was welcomed on both sides of the political aisle.
Very long day. We believe this was a very productive deposition. I will have to say that President Clinton answered every question or attempted to answer every question. This is a serious investigation. We will continue to try to get the truth to the American people and justice for the victims.
US President Trump's name was also brought up during the deposition in regards to his well-documented relationship with Epstein. Democrat Trump should come before the committee. When asked whether Clinton's appearance set a precedent himself, the US President said he didn't like to see Clinton deposed. He added that he didn't know anything about the Epstein files and that he was fully exonerated. A full transcript and video of Bill Clinton's deposition is expected at a later date.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump has raised the possibility of what he called a friendly takeover without giving any details. The U.S. president was discussing talks that he says are underway between Washington and Havana. It comes as the U.S. has piled pressure on Cuba, cutting the island off from vital Venezuelan oil. There was also an incident in which a Florida-registered speedboat carrying 10 armed Cubans from the U.S. got into a deadly shootout with Cuban soldiers. Daniel Quinlan brings up
to the UN office in Geneva, who says if dirty bombs are supplied by the West, it will only push peace further down the road. You can watch the full discussion right here later today.
It is clear that this will not enhance Ukraine's position in any way. As I have already said, just look at what is happening on the battlefield unfolding. I would say this is agony, an attempt by any means opportunities to continue this war. And of course, this does not contribute to population or the search for solutions to the Ukrainian crisis through political means. By the way, it should be noted that our American partners are fully aware of this, are constructively involved in these negotiations, which also provokes hidden resentment among Europeans, particularly in the UK and France. Well, and Germany too, which also needs to realize that it is somehow behind this as well. Therefore, any attempt to strengthen Ukraine's position by supplying it with a dirty bomb or other components will not lead to any results. On the contrary, I would say it will worsen the political situation and the search for a political resolution to the problem.
Now the option of writing is no longer just a hobby or something I wanted to do at some point in my life. It's a necessity.
If it hadn't already felt besieged, the Cuban government is requiring information from the US.
Saman, what do we know? We spoke not a long time ago, and now this. Some images of smoke rising into the sky in Tehran. What's known?
Well, right as reports are saying, and as incoming images are showing, actually Israel has launched preemptive strike, as what he said. Actually, Israel is saying that it has launched preemptive strike against Tehran. Well, so far as we are just seen from the rooftops in three parts of Tehran, two in centers and one in west in Argentine Square. So we are just witnessing thick black smoke rising into the air. And in the center of Tehran, around Pasteur Square, which is a location for the presidential office, around that place has been hit. Of course, we have to wait for official confirmation of the exact places and locations which have been hit by Israel. Of course, according to Israeli Defense Minister, actually, a state of emergency has also been declared in Israel, and this shows that definitely we will wait for the launch of drone and missile attacks by Iran against Israel. You know that definitely any kind of response is awaited to take place in the coming hours against Israeli attacks against Iran, because you know that Iranian officials have always repeatedly said that any kind of attacks from the side of Israel or the United States will be decisively responded in full force. So we have to wait for missile launches or a kind of a appropriate response to these Israeli preemptive strikes. And this comes as Iran and the United States are once again in the negotiations. And this comes as U.S. President Donald Trump on Friday said diplomatic efforts were unsatisfactory and he was about to make a difficult choice. And now what we see today might be the result of that choice. You know that back in June 2025, we saw that, again, U.S. and Iran were in the middle of negotiations, and even the sixth round of talks had been scheduled to take place the week after the fifth round. Again, Israel launched surprise attacks against Iran, killing top nuclear scientists and military commanders, and also hundreds of Iranian civilians. So this again shows that the United States and Israel are again are again, because I'm hearing again, sound is coming right now. I'm just hearing another explosion. So as I'm just reporting live, so we have to wait for official confirmations of exactly the locations or if any casualties have been reported. So as soon as we have it, I'll be back with you,
Yeah, so indeed, just keep an eye on what you said there. You heard an explosion just as you are speaking to us. We'll come back to you in just a moment. Perhaps you can give us a little bit more information on that if it arises. We've also got Charlotte Dubinsky in Jerusalem speaking to us as well. Charlotte, I'm just reading some of the updates from Israel. Katz, the defense minister, it seems that a state of emergency has been announced.
Yes, in the last 15 minutes we heard the air raid silence sound here in Jerusalem, and everybody got an immediate emergency text telling them that they needed to go to a safe space. I could hear my neighbours already battening down the hatch as that aerial siren was blasting across the entire country. The defense minister, Katz, saying that Israel has launched what it describes as being preemptive strikes to remove the threat from Iran. Now, Israel is expecting, as a result of making that emergency message to everyone, that there will be retaliatory strikes from Iran very soon. They're expecting that to be in the form of missiles and drones. So now all public gatherings have been prohibited here, all work has been prohibited. Every citizen in the country, everybody with a mobile, has had the same message to get into a place of safety and to stay there until this is all over. Just to give you a context of this, most buildings in Israel will have some sort of shelter that people can go to, or will have hatches in front of their windows to try and protect them in the case of a retaliatory attack. And all of this is coming, of course, as we've been hearing for days now, that the US was unhappy with what Iran was putting on the table in the negotiations that have been taking place in Geneva. There was also a suggestion that the US has been asking Israel to maybe push forward and to be the one that launches some sort of attack on Iran, saying that the optics on that would be much better. We are also expecting the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio to come to the country, to Israel, on Monday. It's not clear whether that visit will still go ahead. It's also not clear whether the US was given a warning about these attacks, but given the close proximity between these two countries, given the close relationship that we have seen over and over between Benjamin Netanyahu and US President Donald Trump, it is very unlikely that the US wasn't given some advance warning about this attack that Israel has launched on Iran during, as Saman said, that these peace negotiations are underway between the US and Iran. And it really takes us back to last year when, again, during negotiations between the US and Iran, we saw that 12-day war being launched. Just to give you a sense of the situation in the Middle East, it's been tense for a long time now. We're heading into the first day of March. Tomorrow is the last day of February today. And for the past 2 months, we have seen this increasing buildup of military in the Middle East from the US, the biggest military presence now, Ian, since 2003, just before it launched those strikes into Iraq, toppling Saddam Hussein and bringing chaos to a country with hundreds of thousands being killed. As I said, at the moment, we do not know if the US is providing support or involved in these strikes. The only information that we have is from the Israeli Defense Ministry. This is Israel Katz saying that Israel has launched these preemptive strikes against Iran. Many will say those strikes are illegal, and particularly question how those are coming right now in the middle of peace talks. We had the US and Iran speaking in Geneva the last few days, already talks scheduled for Vienna. Will those take place now? It seems that it will be unlikely, especially if this escalates. And as I say, once again, all citizens, all people in Israel have been told to go to a secure place, as we are expecting a retaliatory attack, which you would understand from Iran in the form of missiles and drones. And really, this is something we have been expecting for weeks. In fact, on Friday, we know the US Ambassador, Mike Huckabee, told staff in Israel that they could leave if they wanted to, and if they wanted to get out, Friday was the day. I think that was our indication that this weekend something was going to take place. And of course, now we have it. It has.
Charlotte, thank you. But you have been hearing more. What's the sense of the situation from where you are sitting there now?
The situation here is a little bit mixed situation, reactions from the people, because they're actually surprised by the attacks again. I mean, on people whom I talked to while I was on the rooftops and went out in the streets a little bit around the court of the office right now. Well, because you know that nobody maybe expected such attacks to take place one day right after U.S. President Donald Trump describing the talks, the diplomatic efforts as unsatisfactory. You know, of course, in the past couple of weeks, we have witnessed the deployment of naval assets in the Persian Gulf, and have always been the shadow of military threats against Tehran. But nobody thought that this time again, during the talks, which the third round of which was held in Geneva on Thursday, again, Israel launched what it calls preemptive strikes against Tehran. So now with this, we do know that definitely there would be some retaliatory attacks from the side of Iran against Israel, because Iran says that it will not actually leave any attack unanswered. So like the June 12-day war back in 2025, we have to wait to see how much heavy the retaliation from the side of Iran will be. And so far as we are hearing, Iran has said that, according to Iran's foreign ministry spokesman, that if attacked, definitely negotiations will be stopped. So this will be another blow to the process of negotiations and diplomatic efforts, so far as we know, because this has always been reiterated by Iranian officials that definitely negotiations needs a calm atmosphere and should be taking place away from any pressure, force, or threats and intimidations. But now what we see here on the ground is attacks. It's military action. It's military force on the ground taking the place of negotiations or diplomatic efforts. So in view of all these, we have to see how would be the response of Iranian officials. And we have to wait for incoming statements, reports about the casualties, you know. And now nobody would maybe guess that right after U.S. President Donald Trump, one day after Trump saying the diplomatic efforts were unsatisfactory, and also one day after the Iranian mediator who just held talks with the U.S. Vice President about the details of the Geneva talks on Thursday, actually. So another attack take place here. So this means this is another blow to the process of negotiations. So we have to wait to see what comes out of statements or official reactions towards this here in Iran.
Yeah, thank you, Salman. We'll be getting reaction and throughout this hour to what is unfolding. Charlotte, can I just ask you about perhaps the protocol that happens when an unexpected assault, a reaction of this scale happens in Israel? What happens as regard people leaving work, schools, etc.? Because we know as well that Hezbollah tunnels were hit in southern Lebanon. So this will be nationwide in Israel. What happens now on the streets? Where do people go? Is there a sense of people moving their way towards shelters?
Well, Ian, it's Shabbat here in Israel, so already most things are pretty closed down. Most families will be at home. There's not much work taking place, particularly here in Jerusalem, where all the shops are closed essentially for Shabbat. But the situation is, as soon as those air sirens alerted just after 8 a.m. local time this morning, there was this emergency text that told everybody that they needed to seek shelter to go home. Work is prohibited now, gatherings are prohibited, and this is all as a sense of getting citizens to be prepared for any retaliatory strike. So when I was looking at the streets, they're pretty empty. As I said, on Saturday, it's Shabbat, the religious day of rest here in Israel. But I could see that those individuals who were out on the streets were already looking to make their way back to buildings. Most buildings have shelters in the basement. Those that don't have protective barriers or window shutters that can be brought down. And as those sirens were sounding, I could already hear the shutters in the building that I'm in being brought down because there is no particular shelter here. But people will be seeking safety, and they will be advised by those guidelines that all gatherings, work, home, school, anything has been prohibited, while this state of emergency has now been introduced as Israel has launched that attack on Iran this Saturday morning.
Our key correspondent, Charlotte Dubinsky and Tehran, thank you both. Criticism saying that peace as well is apparently still on the table. A lot of mixed messages. Here's what he said.
Got a lot of things going on. Now we have a big decision to make. You know that. Not easy. Not easy. We have a very big decision. We hit them real hard, as you know, with those beautiful B-2 bombers. Recently knocked out their nuclear capability. But I'd rather do it the peaceful way, but they're very difficult people, I want to tell you that. They're very dangerous people, very difficult people.
Well, immediate reaction after the latest negotiations in Geneva, however, noticeably more positive than before. Both the Omani mediator and Tehran's top diplomat stated that progress was made on Thursday. But the head of Iran's National Security and Foreign Policy Commissions, Ibrahim Azizi, has made it clear that if necessary, the Persian nation is prepared to defend its atomic rights militarily.
A reckless move by the U.S. will set the region on fire. In these negotiations, only issues related to nuclear enrichment have been discussed, and while Iran engages in dialogue, it will not back down from its inalienable rights. The armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran are currently at full readiness and are monitoring all enemy movements in the region. If they commit a miscalculation, they will face a decisive response.
Well, for immediate reaction to today's attack on Tehran, let us cross live now. Tehran.
It's clear to the international community, to people across the world, that the Israeli regime is a menace to humanity. Last time round, we were in the midst of negotiations when they engaged in war. This time round, in the midst of negotiations, they engaged in death and destruction and murder through a blitzkrieg attack again. And we just heard that the negotiations were making progress. We saw that the Omani mediator went to the United States and spoke on television and said that significant progress has been made. So the Israeli regime does not want progress, nor does the Epstein class in the United States and across the Western world. They want war, they want death and destruction, and apparently they're the ones who own the United States.
Do you think this is more of a limited military operation? We keep hearing Israel Katz, the defense minister, saying that it's preemptive, it's being done first before an attack on Israel. What is your view of the scope of this?
I think everyone knows that they are lying. This was not preemptive. there was no plan for war. It is always the Israeli regime that attacks. They bomb Lebanon, murder people, and say it's preemptive. They kill people in Gaza and say it's preemptive. They murder people in the West Bank and say that they're protecting themselves. It's always the Israeli excuse, and the Western media will repeat it. Just like when they murder women and children in Tehran, when they slaughter people across the country here, Western media, legacy media, will call it precision strikes with great intelligence. But all we see is death and destruction on the streets in Tehran. During the last war, two of the missiles struck one of the most important squares in Tehran, slaughtering huge numbers of people. There was no military base anywhere nearby. So to call it preemptive is basically a way to tell the Western media what the narrative is. But in reality, this is just pure aggression.
And do you foresee the US, that huge armada in waters not very far away from Iranian borders, to be having a direct link in this, or perhaps being involved later in a further attack? Is that expected, or perhaps not?
Anything is possible, because Trump is bound to the Epstein class, and therefore Iran is prepared for war. And as we all know, if there is war, then there will be no more oil and gas from this region. And that will lead to an economic crisis. We are already at war with the Israeli regime. And Iran will strike, and strike very hard. And we saw what happened last time during the 12-day war. It was the Israeli regime that had to come begging for a ceasefire. But if the United States gets involved, then it's war with the United States. And Iran will do everything necessary, and by any means necessary, it will defend itself and make sure that the aggression is defeated. These are very dangerous times for the entire world, and I advise all of your viewers and their friends and all of them to protest against the United States, to boycott the United States, to boycott their goods, their products. Everyone has to work in their own way to make sure that the United States regrets aggression, because this will go on and gone. It will go on and on in Cuba, in Venezuela, in Iran, and elsewhere. The world has to bring this to an end.
Do you foresee a response today by Iran against Israel?
No doubt, yes, the Iranian response will be swift, and it will be very severe. There's no doubt about that. The question that you asked that I don't know the answer to is whether the United States is yet directly involved, or whether it's going to be involved, because we saw news from the United States that the Trump regime wanted the Israeli regime to attack first so that it could help somehow justify a subsequent American attack. This is how void of reason and logic the West is, because they have no excuse for attacking Iran. They have to find some way to do it. And again, this just shows that the United States is a rogue regime. It shows that Zionism as an ethno-supremacist ideology is never going to discontinue death and destruction and slaughter. We saw the U.S. ambassador to the Israeli regime saying that Israel can take the entire region. It's fine. That is unofficial U.S. policy. That is the unofficial policy of the Epstein class. And all of the countries in the region, because they are controlled by the United States, they're closing their eyes to the reality. But the fact of the matter is that this ideology, these people, as the U.S. ambassador said, has huge ambitions over the territories of neighboring countries.
Can I put another point to you as well, and it is speculation on my part. Could this also be seen as perhaps a sense of desperation by Israel, seeing that the latest round of talks, progress was made, including, as you say, from the mediator from Muscat, from Oman, saying that that is the case, so that Israel feels as if it has to strike now because there could be a détente of sorts between the US and Iran?
Oh, absolutely. That's exactly what's happening. That's spot on. The Israeli regime is desperate for many reasons. The world has woken up to the reality of Zionism. We just saw recent polls coming out of the United States where the majority of Americans sympathize with the Palestinians rather than the Israeli regime, despite the fact that mainstream media is 100% on the side of the regime, despite the fact that social media is manipulated for the regime, but the tide has turned against it, even in the United States. And now, in these negotiations, progress has been made. The Omanis, who are allies of the United States, were very upbeat. And then we have this attack. This is definitely a sign of desperation. And it just shows that the Israeli regime and their allies in Washington are rogue. They've gone rogue. And that they're a threat to the international community. Again, look at what's going on in Cuba. They are strangling the people of Cuba, and Western media is silent. This behavior has to end. Iran will strike back. It will punish it. If the Americans get involved, Iran will punish it. But people across the world have to play their part. They have to boycott the United States, they have to boycott U.S. allies, and they have to make this painful for the Americans in any way possible. But Iran will do its part, Iran will preserve its sovereignty, and the Israeli regime will be defeated. If the United States gets involved, it will not win this war, but it will bring devastation, real devastation, to the global economy.
Can I just ask you, sir, while we have you live, in terms of a response from Iran, would there be division on that, discussions about how thorough this response should be, whether to hold off and see what transpires later, or what will be talked about today in terms of this response?
Well, since the Israeli regime has struck Iran, without a doubt, Iran will punish the Israeli regime, just like during the 12-day war. And Iran is much more prepared today to do so than it was back then. And the international community has seen once again how deceitful and dishonest and sinister the regime is. Everyone has seen it across the globe. But we have to see what role the United States is playing or will be playing. But Iran is not going to hold back. If the United States gets involved, then it's war with the United States, and Iran is going to go all out. If it's only Israel, the scenario may be different. I don't have enough information yet to be able to determine where things are going to go. But whoever attacks Iran is going to get badly burned. Well, again, these are issues that I'm not privy to, but you are asking a very interesting question. And that is that basically what you're saying is that would the United States and the Israeli regime try to strike enriched uranium?
Yes.
And would they try to create contamination? That basically shows how inhumane these people are, that you can even contemplate such a question. The very fact that these questions can be asked shows how rogue and dangerous this regime is and how dangerous its allies are. That you and I can sit and contemplate things that we would never have contemplated before. Striking key targets while negotiations are taking place already happened once. Now they do it again. The world has to make a decision about how to treat the United States and the Israeli regime, because even if the United States is not directly involved right now, the United States is going to back the Israeli regime no matter what it does. So people across the world, people power has to show its capabilities. Goods have to be boycotted. People have to come to the streets. And Iran, of course, in the axis of resistance will do their part too.
Thank you, sir, for the immediate...
Clinton's appearance set a precedent for himself. The US president said he didn't like to see Clinton deposed. He added that he didn't know anything about the Epstein files and that he was fully exonerated. A full transcript and video of Bill Clinton's deposition is expected at a later date.
Trump has raised the possibility of what he called a friendly takeover of Cuba with
the extent of the damage, just as the professor was saying, has yet to be reported, but this really does give us a sense that it was a significant strike in what looks to be a very central area, lots of buildings, purportedly civilian infrastructure there as well. It looks like as traffic moves away at speed from that region. Well, Israel itself has confirmed the strike. Defense Minister Katz saying that the assault is intended to prevent threats to the nation state of Israel. A national emergency has been declared as Israeli citizens hunker down waiting for a potential Iranian response. Well,
The island nation only produces 40% of its own fuel and mainly relies on oil to power their energy grid. Blackouts are now endemic and petrol is being rationed, bus routes suspended. The UN is increasingly concerned.
The situation is serious, I think, and it is evolving quite rapidly, and it carries a real, risk for human suffering. The energy shortages.
De votre présence à Géopolitis.
Centre de commandement du renseignement des gardiens de la Révolution, ou encore le siège de l'Assemblée des experts pour la direction.
And called for limits on using its AI for weapons and surveillance. The